Sir, these cars aren't for everyone. Her voice sliced through the hume of the showroom. Cool, sharp, lined with something unspoken. Marcus stood, calm, unshaken, hands in his pockets, eyes steady on hers. The gleam of a silver coupe behind him reflected the tension stretching between them. She didn't know who she was talking to. 2 hours earlier, the sun beat down on Charlotte, North Carolina, bouncing off the sleek glass front of Hamilton Auto Gallery. Marcus pulled into the parking lot of the dealership he had recently acquired. The southern heat shimmered off the sleek luxury vehicles parked out front, their glossy finishes practically glowing beneath the afternoon sun. He parked his modest SUV in an unmarked spot at the back and stepped out, taking a moment to scan the dealership's facade. He wasn't dressed for attention, quite the opposite. A simple gray hoodie, slightly worn jeans, and sneakers were his uniform for the day. His choice was deliberate. He wanted to see the dealership's true colors, to experience how it operated when no one knew the new boss was watching. As he walked toward the entrance, he noticed a small group of employees chatting near the front desk. The faint hum of laughter and casual conversation floated through the glass doors. Marcus opened the door and stepped inside. The air-conditioned showroom offered a stark contrast to the heat outside, filled with the faint scent of leather and fresh wax. Rows of pristine cars gleamed beneath the bright overhead lights. The chatter quieted as he walked in. He caught the brief glances exchanged between the employees, eyes flicking toward him, hoodie, sneakers, registering the subtle shift in energy, the kind that spoke louder than words. But he wasn't here to make assumptions. He was here to observe. Then, from across the showroom, she appeared. Linda. Mid-40s, sharp features and an even sharper gaze. She approached with purpose. Tailored blazer, polished heels clicking against the floor, clipboard tucked beneath her arm like a shield. Her expression was polite at first glance, but there was a tightness in her smile that didn't escape Marcus's notice. "Excuse me," Linda began, her voice cool and clipped. "Can I help you with something?" Marcus smiled, his demeanor calm. "Just here to look around," he said casually, gesturing toward the cars. Linda's eyes narrowed, scanning him from head to toe. Her polite mask slipped ever so slightly, replaced by something less welcoming. "Are you shopping for a car today?" she asked, her tone carrying an edge of doubt. Marcus nodded, still smiling. Something like that," Linda's lips pursed. "Well, we cater to a very specific clientele here. Most of our inventory requires pre-qualification. Perhaps I could recommend..." Before she could finish, another employee called out from across the showroom, mentioning the delivery guy. Her attention wavered but snapped right back, as though ensuring Marcus wouldn't wander too far. He raised an eyebrow, keeping his tone light. "You're assuming I'm not qualified?" The question seemed to catch her off guard, but only briefly. She recovered quickly, posture stiffening. "I'm just trying to save you some time," she replied with a forced smile. "These vehicles start at 6 figures. Maybe I can direct you to..." Marcus's expression didn't waver. Internally, he noted her choice of words. The subtle sting of her assumptions was undeniable. The moment lingered, tension hanging in the air. But Marcus stood steady, hands in his pockets, his composure unshaken. Marcus stood in the center of the showroom, hands in his pockets, his gaze drifting over the lineup of cars. He wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but Linda's dismissive attitude was hard to ignore. Around him, the staff had resumed their conversations, though he caught the occasional glance in his direction. It was the kind of scrutiny he'd become accustomed to over the years, the silent judgment, the coded look. Linda returned a moment later, her clipboard clutched tightly as though it were a shield. Her brisk stride and forced smile betrayed her annoyance. "All right," she said, stopping a few feet away from him. "I've compiled a few options that might be more suitable for your situation." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "My situation? Yes, Linda replied, her tone clipped. She handed him a printout of pre-owned vehicles, each with detailed descriptions and price tags well below the dealership's typical offerings. These are more accessible models, reliable, economical, and, well, practical. Marcus took the list without a word, his eyes scanning the page. A used sedan, an older SUV, a compact hybrid. His lips twitched in faint amusement, but he quickly hid it, folding the paper and tucking it into his pocket. "Appreciate the effort," he said, his tone even. Linda seemed momentarily disarmed by his response, but she recovered quickly, her hands resting on her hips. "Listen," she said, her voice dropping as if she were about to share a secret. "I'm just trying to be realistic with you. Hamilton Auto Gallery isn't for everyone. I don't want to waste your time." Marcus met her gaze, his expression calm but unwavering. "And what exactly makes you think I'm not your target customer?" Linda hesitated, but only for a split second. "I've been doing this a long time," she said. "I can tell when someone's out of their depth." "Out of their depth?" Marcus repeated, his voice neutral, almost thoughtful. "Interesting." There was a flicker of uncertainty in Linda's eyes, but she pressed on. "I'm just being honest. It's better to be upfront than to have someone leave disappointed." Marcus let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head slightly. "Honest. I like honesty. How about this? You let me speak to the owner. Think we can make that happen?" Linda's eyebrows shot up. For the first time, she seemed genuinely caught off guard. "The owner?" "That's right," Marcus said, his tone light, almost conversational. "I'd like to have a word with them." Linda's lips twitched in a poor attempt at a smile. "Well, that's not possible today. The owner doesn't just drop by for casual visits. They're a busy person." "I'm sure they are," Marcus said, nodding slightly. "But maybe you could give them a call? Let them know I'm here. I think they'd want to meet me." Linda's smile tightened and she was beginning to lose patience. It showed. "Look, sir, I'm trying to be as polite as possible, but this is getting ridiculous. I have other customers to attend to. If you're serious about buying a car, we can schedule a meeting with one of our sales consultants. Otherwise?" "Otherwise what?" Marcus asked, his tone still calm, though there was an unmistakable edge now. Linda's eyes narrowed, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "Otherwise, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Marcus stood still, his gaze locked on hers for a long moment. The entire showroom seemed to hold its breath. Marcus stood still, his gaze locked on hers for a long moment. The entire showroom seemed to hold its breath. Then slowly, Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "All right," he said, scrolling through his contacts. "I'll make the call myself." Linda blinked, her brow furrowing. "What are you doing?" "Just calling the owner," Marcus replied, lifting the phone to his ear. "Shouldn't take long." As Marcus lifted the phone, he felt the weight of every gaze anchoring on him. Linda's confidence faltered. Her irritation gave way to confusion. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Around them, a few employees had stopped what they were doing, their attention drawn to the unfolding scene. Marcus held up a finger, as if to say, "Just a moment," then turned slightly away, speaking into the phone. "Yeah, it's me. I'm at the dealership. Everything's fine. Just a little misunderstanding. Could you let them know I'm here?" He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket, turning back to Linda. "They'll be here shortly," he said simply. Linda stared at him, her mouth slightly open. Her eyes flicked from Marcus to the watching staff, then back again, her grip tightening on the clipboard. Who did you just call?" Marcus didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced around the showroom, tracing a finger lazily along the edge of a nearby SUV, as if admiring the finish. The tension in the room swirling around him, unnoticed. His gaze lingered on the staff, who were now watching intently. "Guess we'll find out," he said, his tone almost playful. The tension in the room was palpable, pressing down on everyone present. Linda shifted uncomfortably, her composure beginning to crack. Minutes passed, but the room felt frozen in time, She busied herself with her clipboard, though her movements were stiff, deliberate, betraying her unease. Marcus, on the other hand, remained near the SUV, calm, unshaken, his casual demeanor only adding to the weight of the silence. The few employees scattered around the showroom whispered to one another, stealing glances at the scene unfolding before them. The quiet napped as the main door opened. Every glance darted toward the entrance before the door even opened. A sharply dressed man in a navy suit stepped inside, his polished shoes clicking softly against the tile floor. His expression was serious but warm, and his eyes immediately found Marcus. "Mr. Carter," the man said with a wide smile, extending his hand as he approached. "So good to see you." Marcus returned the handshake with a firm grip, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "Thanks for coming, Alex. Appreciate it." The room collectively stiffened. Silence weighed down the room, thick enough to feel. Linda's clipboard nearly slipped from her hands as her breath hitched, her grip tightening, knuckles whitening. Her eyes darted between Marcus and Alex, the dealership's regional director. Her confusion quickly morphed into visible alarm. "Wait, Mr. Carter?" she echoed, her voice uncertain. Alex turned to her, his friendly demeanor shifting into something more professional, almost curt. "Linda, I see you've already met Mr. Carter." Linda blinked, her mouth opening and closing as though searching for the right words. I didn't realize." "Didn't realize?" Alex asked, his tone sharp. "He's the new owner of this dealership," he finished for her. Linda's face turned ashen, and she took a step back, her clipboard clutched to her chest like a lifeline. I'm so sorry," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know." She began again, but Marcus held up a hand, cutting her off. "It's fine, Linda, really." He took a step closer, his voice calm. "But let me ask you something. If I hadn't been the owner, would you have treated me any differently? Would you have given me the same respect you'd give someone who walked in here wearing a suit and tie?" Marcus held her gaze, letting the silence answer. Linda opened her mouth, but no words came out. The silence pressed harder, stretching across the room. Marcus nodded, as though her silence was answer enough. He turned to Alex, his voice carrying new authority. "Let's gather everyone in the conference room. I think it's time we had a little chat about how things are run around here." The employees filed into the sleek conference room, the air thick with tension. The room, designed to impress with its glass walls and modern furnishings, felt stifling today. The air felt tighter with every seat taken, eyes darting but landing nowhere. Linda sat near the back, her usual confident demeanor replaced with a nervous stillness. Marcus stood at the head of the table, calm and collected, his presence commanding the attention of everyone in the room. Alex remained near the door, arms crossed, his expression unreadable as he watched the staff take their seats. The quiet murmur of whispers died down as Marcus cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping across the group. "Thank you all for joining me on short notice," Marcus began, his tone measured but firm. "For those of you who don't know, my name is Marcus Carter, and as of last month, I'm the new owner of Hamilton Auto Gallery." The weight of his words settled, rippling through the room before anyone could speak. Linda sank lower in her chair, avoiding eye contact. Marcus continued, his voice steady. "I came here today dressed casually for a reason. I wanted to see how this dealership operates when no one knows who I am. I wanted to experience what a potential customer might feel walking through these doors." He let the words settle for a moment before continuing. "What I experienced today was disappointing. I was judged not for what I could bring to the table, but for how I looked. And I'm not here to single anyone out, but we need to talk about what that says about the culture of this dealership." Linda shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her face flushed. Marcus's eyes briefly flicked to her before moving back to the group as a whole. "This isn't just about me," he said. "It's about every person who walks through those doors, every customer who doesn't fit into someone's preconceived notion of what a luxury car buyer looks like." One of the younger sales associates raised his hand hesitantly. Marcus nodded toward him. Go ahead. Mr. Carter, the man began nervously. I think most of us try to treat customers fairly, but sometimes it's hard not to make assumptions. Marcus nodded, his expression thoughtful. I get that, he said. We all have biases, whether we want to admit it or not. He paused, letting the truth of that settle before anyone could push back. But here's the thing. It's not enough to just try to be fair. We have to actively challenge those biases. We have to create an environment where everyone feels respected, regardless of their appearance, background, or anything else. He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. This dealership has built a reputation for excellence. But excellence isn't just about the cars we sell. It's about the experience we provide. And from now on, that experience is going to be built on respect, inclusivity, and fairness. There was a ripple of agreement around the room, though a few faces remained wary. Marcus's gaze settled on Linda, who sat frozen, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Linda, he said gently but firmly, I want to give you the opportunity to speak. Is there anything you'd like to say? The shift of attention felt like a wave, drawing every gaze toward her. She hesitated, her voice barely audible when she finally spoke. I made a mistake, she admitted, her cheeks flushed. I misjudged you, and for that, I'm truly sorry. Marcus nodded, his expression unreadable. Thank you for saying that, he said. I hope this experience will serve as a reminder for all of us, not just you. Because change starts with accountability. He turned back to the group. Moving forward, we will be implementing new training programs to ensure this dealership represents the values I believe in. Every customer deserves to be treated with dignity, no exceptions. If anyone has an issue with that, now's the time to speak up. The room was silent. The silence in the conference room was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. No one spoke. But the weight of Marcus's words lingered, pressing on everyone present. Marcus let the quiet stretch just long enough to make his point before speaking again, his voice calm but resolute. Good. I'm glad to see we're all on the same page. Change isn't always easy, but it's necessary. And this dealership is going to lead by example. He took a step away from the table, his hands resting lightly on its edge as he leaned forward slightly. Let me make something clear. I didn't come here today to humiliate anyone. I came to understand what kind of culture I've inherited and how we can make it better. His eyes moved to Linda, who still sat quietly near the back. Linda, he said, his tone softening just enough to make it clear he wasn't attacking her. You're an experienced manager, and I'm sure you've worked hard to get where you are. But today was a wake-up call for you and for all of us. Linda looked up, meeting his gaze for the first time. I understand, she said, her voice shaky but sincere. He was wrong. And I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Marcus nodded. I believe in second chances, he said simply. But accountability comes first. I'll be meeting with you one-on-one to discuss next steps. For now, let's focus on moving forward. He straightened, turning his attention back to the rest of the team. We're not just selling cars here. We're building trust, creating relationships, and representing a standard of excellence. If you're on board with that, I'm here to support you every step of the way. There was a murmur of agreement, this time louder and more genuine. The staff seemed to relax, the initial tension lifting, if only slightly. Even Alex, who had been standing quietly by the door, nodded in approval. Marcus smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hinted at both relief and determination. All right then, he said, let's get back to work. And remember, how we treat people matters more than anything we sell. As the employees began to file out of the room, Marcus caught Linda lingering by the door. She approached him hesitantly, her hands twisting nervously. Mr. Carter, she began, her voice low. I want to thank you for giving me a chance to do better. I won't let you down. Marcus looked at her for a moment before responding, his voice steady. I hope you mean that, Linda. Actions speak louder than words. But I believe people can change if they're willing to try. She nodded, her eyes earnest. I am. Marcus watched her leave before turning to Alex. Let's set up a meeting with the staff next week, he said. I want to make sure everyone knows what's expected moving forward. Alex grinned, his respect for Marcus evident. You've got it. As Marcus stepped back into the showroom, he glanced around at the cars, the gleaming surfaces reflecting the afternoon light. He thought about how much work lay ahead, but for the first time that day, he felt optimistic. This wasn't just about running a dealership. It was about creating something bigger, a space where people were judged by their character, not their appearance. And Marcus was ready to lead the way.